Hi there, this is going to be a recap for our Castles and Crusades, session number 51. We're back with the B team. We pick up where we left off. They're at the top of the Wyvern Spire, or what was once known as Fort Windview, and they're exploring. And they're exploring these ruins. They're very tightly packed because the center of the spire is hollow. They find what used to be basically the commander's tower, and Orvon sees a old Griffin Rider banner still flapping in the breeze, and it's amazing that it's lasted this long. So he and Willem go and collect that, and it's a little precarious because it hangs out over the edge of the spire. It's 200 feet below to the ground, so they're nervous about the height and stuff that they're at, rightfully so. But they get that without issue. But while they're up there, they see further along, they see another ruin, but there's a big nest. And something shines in that nest, a glint of metal or something. So they push on to explore that. And Willem and Orvon, I should say Orvon and Willem, climb to the top of this nest. And they're digging around in it, and there's big eggs in there. And they pull out this helmet with a skull in it, and they recognize the helmet as belonging to the ghost of Commander Sanchin, who was once the commander of this fort. And and Orvon recognizes it as a Griffin helm, Griffin commander's helm, which is a pretty important item. There's not a lot of those given out anymore. And so he collects that. And while they're in the middle of doing that, this ancient wyvern comes in and attacks. So they end up having a battle here. And I posted some pictures that we had taken during the thing. So if you look at the community posts, you can see some pictures of in-game pictures. Pretty good fight. One thing about it wasn't as tough as I thought it was going to be. Part of it's my dice rolling. It still is plaguing me. But the other thing is, you have to be really careful. This is something I'm learning still, and it's dependent on what you use too. But like a single bad guy, a single monster against a party, it can be tough to do damage with that single monster, because they just get to gang up on it. And that's kind of what happened in this fight. I landed a couple hits. I think I did a whopping 8 points of damage. I did announce prior to one of the attack rolls that if it got both its claw attacks, it was going to grab a hold of Orvon, and I only got one. But didn't really do a lot of damage. Tactics-wise, I didn't try to use the stinger. I tried to use the multiple attacks, and that didn't really pay off for me either. I think in hindsight, what I would have done to make this a little bit more challenging is I would have had a couple lesser wyverns come in and harry the party that was down below. There was a bunch of the rest of them were down here shooting missile weapons, throwing spears, whatever. I think I would have brought some wyverns in there to deal with them, and that would have made it a little bit more challenging, I think. But anyway, they were victorious in the end, and they found this helmet. They also found a cape, and they decided to make camp up here because the time this happened, it is nightfall, and they didn't want to go back down the stairs at night. So while they're camping, I actually rolled randomly if they could use the eggs or not for food, and it came up that they could. So Trotter was getting ready to prepare some big dish with that. But Dern decides that he wants to explore the lower spire. So he turns into a raven, which is his animal form that he's picked. He can turn into a raven. So he flies down into to the bottom of the spire. And he gets down there and he realizes he sees that it's just old mining equipment. And there's a large central tunnel that leads deeper into the earth. And in front of that tunnel is an effigy of a dragon, and it's made up of like scraps from the mining equipment and from the ruins up here. There's like shields and old banners, but it looks like a big dragon. The other thing that happens is he has a little bit of a memory, because he has amnesia. He doesn't remember much past the last 10 years or so. He has a memory, like this place seems very familiar to him. And so he decides to keep flying. He's got quite a bit he's got an hour and We kind of ruled a bird can fly quite a distance in an hour, which seems to make sense. He flies deeper into that big tunnel, keeps following it. He gets down in there and he sees that there's a lot of like tunnels off of that tunnel, but they're like little tiny ones. Like he would probably fit through them, but like the rest of the party wouldn't. And as he goes deeper, there's also like these wind chime things hanging from the tunnel, and he avoids all those. But he starts to see here and there kobolds coming in and out of those smaller tunnels. So he just keeps going. They don't notice him. I think I might have even made some rolls to see if they notice him, but he keeps flying down. And then it comes to a point where the tunnel does a 90 degrees straight down, and then there's lifts there. They're rickety, and but they seem like they're more used. They're likely used by the kobolds, whereas the ones that were going down in from the top of the spire itself, there's probably a few that still could be used, but they're all in really rough shape. Those were used by the people that lived there 150 years ago. These seem to be more current. He flies down deeper and keeps going. The air gets a little bit warmer, and he notes he does come to a tunnel that is off of the main tunnel that's bigger, that he notes that like the party could fit through, but he doesn't go in there to explore. He keeps going. Eventually he comes into this large cavern, and at the far side of the cavern, sitting on top a rocky like pedestal with a hoard of treasure around the base of it, he sees a huge red dragon just sitting there. And this, he knows, is Scariliax, the Flaming Death, the dragon that came when Fort Windview was defeated. And talking to him are two draconic figures that he doesn't understand what they're saying, but they're because they're speaking in draconic, but they're talking to him. And they, whoops, see if I can get these guys, are these two guys. So he doesn't know what's said, but two things happen when he flies into the chamber. Because of the size of this dragon, the radius of its dragon fear, its frightening presence, is quite large, and he gets hit with that. He fails to save, really no way he was going to make it. But because of his level, he's just shaken. So he has like he never had to, but if he'd had to, he basically had a -2 to any roll that he made. Whereas if he'd been not 6th level, if he'd been lower than that, 2 levels lower than that, I think, he would have been under the fear spell itself, but he isn't. He also notes that the dragon sees him and raises like an eyebrow ever so slightly while those two other draconic figures are talking to him. And he's like, oh, I need to get out of here. Like, so he starts hastily, like full movement, flying out of there. And he gets quite a ways up the tunnel before he starts to hear like a rumbling roar behind him. And he knows that the dragon is coming. And he flies all the way back up to the others. They're in the middle of their camp, like, you know, they're eating scrambled wyvern eggs that a trotter has cooked up. Pounder's got a big old mouthful. He really likes eggs. And he just kind of like crashes into the camp. That's how my boy described it. He just like tries to land, just crashes in the camp. And then he's like, we need to get out of here. We need to get out of here. And tells them, dragon, dragon, dragon. So they're like, oh, they hastily grab what they can. I don't even think they really grabbed all of their equipment. They grab the essentials, and then they start going down, trying to get down the stairs. Dern uses his boots of speed, which I'd actually forgot he had, and starts bounding down the stairs. He ends up tumbling towards the bottom and almost fell off the edge, but he didn't. Took a little bit of damage. Astamar, our Fey Elf wizard, he jumps off and casts Levitate, but that's actually kind of a really slow way to get down because you can only move like 20 feet at a time. And it's 200 feet up. So he is like bounding down slowly through Levitate. But it's probably safer than falling off the edge for sure. Then the rest are just trying to make their way down. But they eventually do. And they hunker down in the ruins. I don't remember if they're all the way down or not, but the dragon comes out like, poof, comes out right up through the top of the spire, you know, silhouetted in the moonlight, and lets out a roar, and he starts flying around, and the impression they get is, yeah, he's looking, but he's also like, this is the first time he's taken flight in quite a while. He or it, they don't know if it's male or female dragon, but it flies. Sacreliax flies around. Eventually comes back and perches on top of the spire again, lets out some more roars, and they basically hunker down for the night. They know that, listen, this thing's, if we try to run, it's going to see us. Our best bet is just to remain hidden. So they stay. They have a cold night because they're smart enough. They're not going to start a fire. They're just basically huddled down under ruins, and until eventually the dragon goes back inside. There's a little bit of decision making going on next. They part of the party wants to go back and warn the elves, the Blackwood elves, and then I think it was Astomar that he didn't want to do that because he didn't want to draw the dragon to them, which is smart. But ultimately, Dern decides he's going to fly back in Raven form, while Trotter leads the party south, because one of the things is Trotter's informed them is like, we should not try to go back through the troll lands. Like, we need to go around the troll lands, which is going to make for a long journey. We kind of ruled on the fly that it was going to take about 2 weeks of travel overland to get back to Arden, and that's the goal, is to get back to Arden. Whereas Dern was probably going to get back there much sooner because he was just going to Raven form to the elves, rest for a night, and then he could most likely make it all the way back. And I think he did make it all the way back to Arden the next day. So that's what they do. Before we get too far, when they're fleeing, Dern has another memory, and he remembers doing this before. So it kind of comes out that it also came out while they were exploring the ruins of the top of the spire that they were built by dwarves, and he sees like the evidence of dwarves were doing the mining here, and it was actually silver veins that he saw when he was going through the tunnel. So when they're fleeing from the dragon, Dern remembers that and basically figures out that he was here when Sacreliax and the wyverns attacked the first time, and he fled, and he was a survivor of this place, which nobody knew. It's kind of fun. We're playing around with Dern's background because he has amnesia, so it's like he came in with no backstory really, which was great because then you can just interject things as we go, and that's exactly what happened. So they decide to flee. So by this time, Dern returns to the elves. He meets with Korg, the troll shaman, and Sinwi. And at first, Sinwi's mad because he's like, "Oh, you're going to lead. You bled death to us. You've roused this dragon." But eventually, things calm down, and Dern and Sinwi actually have a moment where Dern apologizes for what happened to their land, the dwarves that destroyed it, and such. And then he departs for Arden and waits for his friends, and he's taking care of Orvon's horse. There was some humor there. He because Orvon had to stable his horse in Arden, so he's talking. He ends up using spells to talk to his horse to find out if Orvon's a good master and all this stuff, and that was just kind of funny that they were doing that. And there was a moment when they parted ways, when the party separated, that Dern asked Willem to look after his badger, and there's been a little bit of backstory with that, like where the badger was always kind of mean to Willem, like bite him and stuff, and Willem was like, all right, he agrees, but he's not happy about it. And eventually they all returned to Arden, and we were running on time. We were running short on time, so I didn't do much. It was just described that they had like a really rough, long trip to get back, the rest of the party. It took them about 2 weeks to get back to Arden. Dern flew right over the troll lands, and he saw trolls mustering and on hunting parties and stuff like that. So they made a wise decision not cutting back through the troll lands. And then we kind of, we had a little epilogue basically in what they decided to do next, because this was designed as a 3-part adventure, and this was it. Like Orvon completed his quest. He got a banner, this old Griffin Rider banner, and he got the Griffin Commander's helm. And there was a scene where they laid I forgot this. They laid the Commander Stanchion's ruins. They dug remains out of the nest, and laid him to rest in his old tower at the top of the spire. And the ghosts appeared and confirmed that, you know, basically gave Orvon that helm as his. It was his right to wear it now. And he had put it on before, or maybe it was after, I don't remember. But one of the things, they didn't identify it. And one of the things I told them was that you just notice that Orvon's like stature, like his presence is like greater. It's like, wow. And later on, Eostamar cast Identify on the cape, and he cast Detect Magic. The cape and the helm are magical, nothing else was. And later on, he cast Identify, and the helm gives Orvon a boost to his charisma, and a big boost to his charisma, and it gives him a little bit of armor class bonus. But the other thing it allows him to do is telepathically communicate with any griffin that he's bonded to. So that may be some stuff that plays out down the road. The cape was a cape of the Montbank, which allows him to use Dimension Door once a day, and Eostamar took that. The party agreed that he should have that. And so, back to the ending. They're in Arden. They spend some downtime there, recovering from travel. Then they decide we got to go. Orvon needs to return south to Asharn to meet with his mentor, Lord Commander Dalen, because he's completed his quest. So him and Willem are going to go back. So the party's kind of like breaking up. They're making promises like, hey, if you ever need anything, please find me. You've been a good companion. There's a little moment between Dern and Willem, and because they've kind of like had a little love-hate relationship where they pester each other a lot and stuff. But Willem asks Dern to travel with them, and Dern agrees. So I think ultimately, because there was some different ideas, but I think ultimately everybody, and Eostamar spoke up too, that he needed people that he trusted around him and stuff, and wanted people around him to trust. So he didn't want to like break up the party. And I think ultimately they've all decided to travel back to down to Asharn, which is a whole separate country far to the south that they have to go to. It's probably over a month away, to return and to Lord Dalen Estenbrook's estate and fulfill Orvon's quest, which is basically fulfilled. So that's kind of where we ended it. They did that on their own. I wasn't sure how this was going to end, because we've talked about continuing this group and this campaign into something, but I always have this desire to run different things. So, and I already have the other Castles and Crusades campaign. So I think the way it's shaking out right now is we're going to put a halt on the B team. They're going to do that. And then I have ideas for the B team. This won't probably be the last we see of the B team. I have several ideas for them. But we're going to switch it up and switch gears a little bit. We're actually going to focus on, this is our Thursday night group, so we're going to focus on my son finishing up his Scarlet Citadel campaign. And then I think I'm going to, right now, tentatively, the plan is I'm going to run some Free League Forbidden Lands game. If you're not familiar, a really neat game. I've never run it, but I've been reading on it, and it's interesting. It's fantasy, but it's more of a exploration type game and resource management and stuff. So we're kicking that idea around. So we might play that for a while, and then maybe some other stuff. Some of the guys have one shots and stuff that they want to run, so we'll be able to do that. And hopefully my boy can finish up the Scarlet Citadel. But yeah, so that's the adventures of the B team for now. They will be back, I'm sure. Everybody enjoyed playing those characters. I enjoyed running games for those characters. So and I have more ideas, like I said, for them. So we'll definitely go back to it, but we're just going to break it up for a little bit now. But yeah, that's the review and a recap. And I'll do a real quick thing on the terrain. So we got WizKids Red Dragon. I think that's an adult Red Dragon. A couple WizKids Draconian miniatures. They came out okay. I painted these. This I bought the dragon was painted when I bought it. The little Draconians I painted. Not the greatest miniatures in the world, so not the greatest paint job, but it did the job. I didn't know what they were going to do with those guys, if they were going to fight or not, so definitely wasn't sure how that was going to shake out. WizKids Big Wyvern. I bumped up its stats a little bit, not that it really helped it much, but So we got some 3D printed terrain in the back, got some resin printed terrain here. This is from Tabletop World. I don't know who designed the file for that ruined building in the back, but that was printed by Centurion Studios on Etsy and painted by me. A little bit of Dwarven Forge here on the corner where the bird's nest. The nest and the eggs are 3D printed. I don't remember where I got them from. Oh, yes, I do. Dungeon Artifacts on Etsy. And the base it's on is something I built. So I think I might have had that in pictures before. If not, if anybody's interested, I can give you a closer look at it. It's kind of a beast of a build, but it worked pretty good. I actually, oddly enough, like when I set up this, I wasn't really super impressed with it. Like I didn't think it was that great of a setup, but once we get the miniatures and stuff on it while we were playing and guys were taking pictures of it, then I was like, oh, that's actually pretty cool. Like it did come out pretty good and it worked perfect for what we were doing. So, but yeah, that's it. That's episode 51. I'm actually running a session in a couple hours. It'll be episode 52. We'll be back with the regular campaign. And then after that, it'll probably be the next Castles and Crusades update will be the first part of January when we're doing our annual gaming weekend. I think it's our 8th one. So I'll be running an all-day session there. Tonight's session will decide what we're doing there. They got a couple different options, so tonight we'll figure it out what they're going to do, and then I'll be prepping that for the rest of this month and getting it ready. So yeah, I appreciate you all watching. I never really push any like sharing or anything, but if you have friends that like terrain and miniatures and stuff, please feel free to share any of the videos or any of that stuff. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, love to see them. Catch you at the next one. Thank you.